According to the judges, there's more to a good wine than colour, nose and palate.
They have to now be a little more stylish, and it's very difficult to describe what we mean exactly by that. A little more refined, a little more elegant.
There are 38 classes in this year's Hunter Valley Wine Show. For 2 days, judges will sniff and taste their way through 730 entries. The 94 Chardonnay class featuring a record 77 wines alone. In the past, the competition has been open to all wines north of Sydney, but this year they're exclusively from the Hunter.
There's a growth of regional shows, and it's felt that regional shows should concentrate on their region rather than have other things. We make lovely, soft, elegant wines in the Hunter which have their own unique flavours, which develop very well in the bottle into a flavour which is unknown in the rest of the world. We should be encouraging that.
Medal winners won't be known until Thursday, and while expectations are high, there are growing concerns next year's vintage could be halved by the drought.
My God, I don't want to be here next year for the 95 vintage if this drought continues. Unless we get some rain in spring, it's going to be a very hard vintage.
Okay, that's fine. Although a relatively newcomer to the horse breeding industry, Arrowfield stud at Jerry's Plains is making its mark in Australia and overseas. Most of its success lies with 6 stallions that have just returned from a 3.5-month stay in Ireland and America, doing what they do best.
The mares are covered first thing in the morning in the cool of the day, and then the horses go out into their runs, anywhere from an hour to 6 hours, and then they come back into the box. They live a fairly relaxed, pampered life.
But it's not all horseplay. These 3 stallions alone will mate with up to 90 mares each a season. With a $30,000 charge per service, collectively they're expected to earn just under $10 million. And that's a lot of pressure when you're on call to perform after a long journey.
Some horses get a little nervous, a little bit stressed, and we weigh the horses. That's about the greatest indicator. And some horses do drop a bit of weight. The expectations of the stallion owners and the shareholders in the stallion and the returns they can achieve, and also the mare owners that have decided to send their mare to the stallion, they certainly want results.
Leading the field is Dane Hill, Australia's top sire of 2-year-olds and father to this year's Golden Slipper winner. His service price has just doubled, but after this season and 5 years on the overseas circuit, it's time for a break.
It sounds like a very enjoyable life, but believe me, their work's cut out for them.
Heavy traffic on Morree's main street has been a problem for at least 15 years. Even though it's a 4-lane road, there are dangers.
Having 4 lanes of traffic increases the danger, increases the speed of traffic, yet at the same time it's not providing what a normal 4 lanes of traffic would do, because whenever cars pull up on the inside lane in order to park, they hold a whole lane of traffic up.
But Paul Assef hopes a new plan formulated by local businesses will help solve some of the problems.
The proposal involves putting 2 roundabouts in the main shopping strip, one on the Albert and Bailey Street corners and one on the Guida Street and Bailey Street corners.
It's hoped that would slow down through traffic, improving safety for pedestrians and local traffic.
The roundabouts will mean that the highway is accessible, that vehicles can get across the highway at 2 extra intersections other than just the traffic lights, which is the only safe crossing at the moment.
The proposal, which includes bringing traffic into one wide lane to allow more room for parking and turning vehicles, is now being considered by Council.
As expected, the towns of Currie and Toronto were today decked out in their team's colours. Grand final rivalry starting early, with each trying to outdo the other. Toronto had its market day, while the bred in Currie appeared in a distinctive blue, red and white. One person hoping the Bulldogs won't be as cuddly come Sunday is centre Brian Quinton, who believes the game may be his last.
If I'm not coaching, I would definitely won't be playing.
Given this, it's little wonder the man that the Toronto crowd love to hate is so passionate about Sunday.
It's that important I couldn't begin to say. It just means everything to me, and I know it means everything to the boys I'm with.
Last night the players were paraded at Garden City. Curry happy with the underdog tag after 3 losses against the Scorpions this season.
Toronto's got the psychological edge there, but it's a grand final and we're going to hopefully change the fortunes.
And after Phil Williams' miraculous effort from the sideline last weekend, his counterpart is confident he's ready for the occasion.
Kim, I've been out practising every day this week. Hopefully things will come off well on Sunday.
Meantime, in lower grades, Souths confront Maitland and Lakes take on West. On the Central Coast, the entrants play Yamina in the major semi, while in Group 21, Scone face Singleton.
Since it opened 3 years ago, Link House has provided a home to dozens of teenage boys who would otherwise be living on the streets.
There are 4 welfare workers and casual staff. They provide special education, counselling and try and give the boys a good home life.
But the New Lambton House will no longer operate as a refuge because of financial problems. The Department of Community Services provides about $150,000 in funding, but the home is running at a loss and St Vincent de Paul can no longer afford to support it.
There's just so much demand. The recession has hit all the services and organisations, charitable and government funding as well. It's just been a very difficult period.
Last year, Mallison House, a refuge for pregnant teenagers, was also forced to close after a request for funding was turned down. Charity organisations say while the need for community welfare keeps rising, financial support is not keeping up with demand.
Be very much aware of the need out there and, where possible, give generously.
Once upon a time, there were 360 students at St Joseph's Primary School. Today, most had turned into little horrors. Even the teachers were dressed up as part of the school's Book Week celebrations. To help make their favourite tales a little more real, classrooms were transformed into adventure lands. And in this age where books are sometimes replaced by video games and computers, it seems they all have a part to play in a child's education.
The library is actually computed as well, so that they can then access their information on the library computer, then go back and find the information on the book on the shelf. So it's pretty integrated all the way through.
Curry's Phil Williams booted the Premiers 2 points clear in the opening minutes before Mal Graham exchanged pleasantries with his counterpart. But it was Linane who had the last laugh, his chip and chase giving the Bulldogs an 8-0 lead. Williams then extended Curry's advantage, a penalty goal and try initiated by Quinton, stunning the Scorpions. Shane Tobin gave Toronto some hope with a dubious try right on half-time, while a Ryder penalty and Paul Bacon try in the opening minutes of the second term put them back in contention. Curry then advanced to a 20-10 lead via the boot of Dale Williams, but Toronto kept coming, and it was their quick thinking in the ruck that brought an unlikely try 5 minutes from time. But Curry held on in the final stages, their fans swamping them, aware their team had created club history in winning consecutive premierships. Other grand final winners today included Maitland and Lakes United.
The deal over Green Point collapsed 2 weeks ago when Council failed to approve a house on the waterfront land. However, the agreement is now back on track, and General Manager of Macloy's, Ross Howard, couldn't be happier. Basically, Council has agreed to give early approval to the Macloy family house. In return, the company has given a guarantee it won't use the house as a reason for extra compensation if the deed of agreement ever collapses. The city will also get its 160-hectare foreshore park. As to whether the future of the agreement will be smooth sailing,
it's anybody's guess. If you had have asked me that a month ago, I would have said yes, I think Green Point should be smooth sailing from here on in. Yes, I think it will be.
The next stage of Macloy's proposal involves the company seeking rezoning and development approval for the first of 540 residential lots. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Another clear day in the northwest, not good for drought-stricken farmers, but the dry weather pulled in the crowds for day one of the 22nd Gunnedah Ag Quip. Farmers seem to put their woes behind them, preparing for that predicted buying spree over the next few days. If you've got a spare $200,000, this plane is yours.
I heard they had 70mm out in Moree the other day, so you never know.
Let's hope they've got enough money to buy a plane.
Yes.
Down at the cattle yards, things weren't looking so good, not for the cattle anyway, but Murray grey breeders hope the advertising will help promote their stock.
Ag like this covers 100,000, 140,000 people, and we're just spreading the word about Murray Greys, and they can come and see hands-on the cattle that are here.
AgQuip continues tomorrow and Thursday. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Brian Vaughan was invited to the Manning area by the Country Manufacturers Association. This morning he was shown through Anvic Meats. He also toured 7 other businesses, including Ganinan, Stebercraft, the Lord Safe Company and Bayview Seafoods. Mr Vaughan believes one of the most important resources of country areas is being lost, with many young people leaving for the city.
One of the most essential things in a regional development policy, I think, has to be the concept of keeping young people in the towns.
Also a concern to Mr Vaughan, the government's plan to increase the payroll tax threshold.
The Country Manufacturers Association, of course, is particularly interested in a reintroduction of payroll tax rebates in country New South Wales.
Mr Vaughan says he will support a bill by independent MP Tony Windsor calling for a country payroll tax exemption.
At issue is the ageing fleet of 28 tankers. The rub is that 3/4 of them are entirely petrol-powered, and in the heat of battle they can become immobilised. The brigades had expected all the vehicles to be replaced over the next 7 years, but recent funding announcements put that plan at risk.
The main concern is the unreliability of the vehicles when they're operating in high temperatures, vaporisation of the petrol, the motors will not work.
The new vehicles the crews want introduced would not only be diesel-powered, like this one in use in an outbreak 3 weeks ago, but would be fitted with heat shields to help protect personnel in the event of a fire getting too close.
We need heat shields as a bare minimum on these vehicles to afford the crew protection from radiant heat.
Councillor Byrne is seeking a review of funding for the next 12 months by both the Council and the State Department of Bushfire Services.
There are a few familiar faces in the lineup. All are well-known local performers and identities preparing to do their bit to help the people of Rwanda.
Was blind, but now I see.
This impromptu concert on the steps of Newcastle's Mission Theatre today is only a sample of what's to come. On Sunday, about 50 performers will take to the stage to raise money.
We've got a range from jazz singers, we've got comedians, we've got expatriates, David Wood, Penny Biggins, my sister. We've got groups, we've got an African choir, people from the HVTC, all sorts of people.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been slaughtered during the civil war that's devastated the country. While Australian aid has brought some relief, the full impact is yet to be realised and more help is still needed.
People can come along and they can also give and get something back in return. And it's a way of community saying that we do support these sort of causes. And just because Rwanda's off the front page doesn't mean the problems are over.
It's a problem that's affected residents and motorists for nearly 30 years. Located in both Lake Macquarie and Newcastle, the narrow and windy road has become a major thoroughfare for those travelling from Wallsend to Charlestown.
Well, the road was made that narrow because it was designed to service a few residents 25 or 30 years ago and a few rural properties down at the western end of it. It's since been linked up and goes all the way through to South Wallsend.
Local member John Mills addressed a meeting of concerned residents last night, called by police after a number of complaints over breaches of traffic safety regulations. Police say in the past they've used their discretion and issued a number of warnings when dealing with various traffic offences along the road, but plan to take some serious action with speeding.
Wallsend Police warned the residents that they would do what the residents wanted to reduce the speeds, and that is start booking people for and booking and policing the road very heavily for speed. And of course the policemen warned the residents that they'd better take care because it's most likely that they'd be the ones who'd be caught speeding on their own road.
Lake Macquarie Council is conducting a major traffic study. With many residents being booked for illegal parking, Mr Mills says he plans to ask Transport Minister Bruce Baird for a downgrading of the road's status to reduce traffic and leniency when it comes to paying fines.
A temporary measure would be useful and until some larger road planning decisions for the area can be made.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Worth about $750,000 to council coffers, there was plenty of debate over what should become of the Port Stephens Chambers once council had decided to move its premises.
Because it's a very valuable commercial site right in the middle of town, there was some pressure that it be used for commercial purposes only.
Council eventually settled on a plan for a community health centre with about 1/3 of the building to be leased commercially. Today the revitalised complex was officially opened. Part of the chambers was rebuilt and the 29-year-old building given a facelift at a cost of $1.2 million. The complex is now the home of Home and Community Care, Raymond Terrace Home Care and Daycare Centres, Meals on Wheels, Respite Care and Home Maintenance.
When I first visited them, I thought they seemed to be operating out of a broom cupboard, and it's I'm delighted that we're now able to give them more space and also be able to expand our community mental health team in Raymond Terrace.
There is an ageing community and there is a need for all these services, so what better way to do it than to bring them together?
We're losing the last of these magnificent 400, 500-year-old trees just for paper, for 1 or 2 days use for Japanese comics, and it's really time to end the destruction in our old forests.
It was the who's who of Hunter sporting personalities, the beneficiaries, the more than 500 students from Ellamore Vale Primary and preschools. Organised by members of the school's P&C, the idea was to dedicate 1 day a year to sports, giving children the opportunity to experience a variety of codes. 20 sports were covered, each one having specialist coaching from local leaders in their chosen disciplines.
All right, here we go. Everybody want a ball inside?
I feel sport's very important to children, outdoor activities, and to let them know that that sport is there for them if they want to be involved with that sport.
Children from the Waratah Orthopaedic School also joined in. Judging by the enthusiasm of all participants, the day will become a regular event. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
After 4 months in the making and close to $250,000, the Hunter's 18-footer skilled engineering was unveiled in the harbour today. Lord Mayor John McNaughton christened the craft before becoming its first passenger. A revolutionary design, its sails were imported from America and are being used for the first time in this class of racing.
There's obviously a few guys' reputations on the line here for all these things to work.
The current 505 class world champion, Chris Nicholson, will be joined by crewmen Craig Phillips and Gary Boyd for the National Series, which begins on Sydney Harbour on September 17. They finished 6th at their first attempt last summer, with expectations high this season.
I think we'll run the first 3 or 4 this year. We're hoping obviously for first place, and the crew's put a lot of work into it, and we got a lot of faith in them, and I'm certain this year they'll go very, very well.
Williamtown Air Base near Newcastle is hosting the tournament. The men and women's teams from the Air Force, Navy and Army have come together every year since 1978 in the quest for the Services Soccer Trophy. There's also an extra incentive for the players, with the Australian Combined Services team to be selected after the tournament. Players in the newly recruited police team in the blue and white checks were vying for a place in their national team to play in the World Police Games next year. They scored 3-0 in the first half before the Air Force made matters worse with an own goal. Police winning 4-0. In the women's game, the Navy and Army drew 2-2. The tournament finishes on Thursday. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Well, you can't do much when it's tipping over, you just got to go with it. And the wind caught the plate and took it out, swung it right out, and then the legs just dug in the ground and over it went.
Telecom today unveiled plans to invest $291 million in new and improved services for the region.
If you've got a family and you have, say, 2 or 3 teenage kids, then phone calls coming in from a particular set of numbers can have a certain ring about them so that you know they're for the teenage kids.
Chief Operations Officer Peter Shaw denies the investment was a response to competition from Optus.
This program was being planned prior to competition actually beginning.
Mr Shaw says Optus largely uses Telecom's network, so it too will benefit from Telecom's upgrade. Telephone users in the region will be asked to choose between Optus and Telecom from September 14th. Telecom obviously hopes to keep its customers.
We employ over 1,000 people in the Newcastle region, and we pump about $75 million per annum into the local economy, so we think we really make a big contribution to this part of the world.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It was Sydney's Operation Basalt which unearthed a massive quantity of stolen goods being sold through licensed second-hand dealers and pawnbrokers. 15,000 items were recovered, around 2,500 charges laid. Operation Basalt, though, was just a small drop in the ocean. Each year, $135 million in property is stolen. It's estimated around 60% passes through second-hand dealers or pawnbrokers. In the past, the regulations governing dealers have been sporadically enforced and poorly adhered to. However, police are now getting tough. Newcastle's 360 dealers have until December 1st to make sure their books are in order and they are following the law to the letter.
As it stands, we could go into dealers today and breach them, but we feel that due to a lack of information in the past and correct information available to these people, it is only fair to give them an opportunity to get their businesses in order before we proceed with any prosecution.
Senior Constable Linda Hamill has put the program together. Today the crackdown was explained to dealers and pawnbrokers. They were given an information leaflet which sets out what they're required to do.
The idea of the Second Hand Dealers Act is to keep a track of where property is going, where it's been, who it's going to. So we hopefully can detect offenders.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
It's a musical about love, laughs and high seas larrikins. The cast assembled in Newcastle for the launch of the first show outside a capital city. John English and Simon Gallagher are originals from the 1984 show and say this production is even better.
It's generic, The Appeal of Pirates. It's basically not a serious show at all. It's a very good fun night out. I mean, basically, if you want to come out and have fun, that's what you've got to do.
The new face is Helen Donaldson. giving her own unique interpretation to the role of Mabel, made famous by Marina Pryor in the original Australian production.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful cast, it's wonderful fun, it's a great show to do. It's great.
She's going great. I mean, she's terrific.
The musical starts at the Civic Theatre on November 9. Richard O'Leary, NBN News. The Falcons return to their old stamping ground at the Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium for the clash against the Korean club side Hyundai. 4 of the top Falcons were out, including American imports Dozier and Rucker. The omissions gave Marty McLean a chance to shine. The Koreans couldn't match it with their taller and stronger opponents, the Falcons using quick turnovers to race ahead of their rivals. Paul Kuiper towered over the visitors, using his height advantage to top score with 14 points. The 100-69 win was a solid lead-up to the Falcons' crucial game against the Gold Coast Rollers this weekend. Newcastle lies on the edge of the top 8 and must win most of its last 4 games to get a crack at the NBL title. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.